He did not arrive by door or road. He condensed from chalk dust and cold light the way a scribble becomes a circle with one last stroke. In the midnight laboratory beneath the university, valves clicked without hands and flywheels chose momentum. The air smelled of brass, ozone, and rain that had not been scheduled. A tufted silhouette flickered between frames, ears like punctuation to a sentence the city had not learned to read. Where he set his small boots, the floor traded dust for constellations. Grit arranged itself into tiny auroras, each spinning until the breath that made it forgot to matter. They tell it simply in Piltover, a yordle whom time outgrew. The myth refuses simplicity. Heimerdinger's hair lit like winter flame, his goggles held small C's, and his shadow moved one beat out of phase, writing annotations after he had already passed. On a stool too tall for anyone else to trust, he leaned forward and the room leaned with him. Around the lab's dome, numbers gathered like starlings and turned in quick-thinking knots, proofs fluttering from perch to perch as the chalkboards cooled. The city above slept in tidy lines of street lamps. Below, the lab inhaled. Gaskets swelled. Copper breathed. A window fogged from the inside with diagrams of wind. Heimerdinger raised both hands and the air shivered the way water shivers when a stone decides to be thrown. Transformation. His machines woke the way animals stir before thunder. In the corners, turrets blinked open lids of bronze. Within each barrel, rough-drafted galaxies spun, more ambition than matter. A wrench rested on the bench until it exhaled and became a spider that measured angles with silk. A piece of chalk hopped once and drew its own proof. Heimerdinger tapped a schematic and the paper rose, breathing, its veins a lattice of copper like the inside of a leaf. He did not command these things. He edited them and they were grateful to be corrected. He spoke in syllables of mechanical weather. Clacks, clicks, the hush of a gear admitting a better tooth. He addressed problems as one coaxes a frightened animal out from under a bed. Resistance softened. Equations remembered childhood. Time, embarrassed, apologized for how it had previously behaved and shuffled nearer to hear instructions. In the rafters the lab mice learned calculus by osmosis. On the floor the oil stains organized into ellipses and refused to smear. The turbines along the wall exchanged promises in low vowels and kept them. Every instrument lifted its head to listen. Echo of war. Between the bolts and promises, battles insisted on their echoes. He kept them on shelves in jars labeled with neat hands, Shuriman static, Zonite streetlight fog, abyssal frequency, controlled sample. When unscrewed, each jar exhaled a memory that turned tools into witnesses. Turrets recalled alleys where they had bloomed and burned. Rockets remembered paths across roofs whose shingles kept names. The Hextech core under his desk carried a bruise borrowed from a sky where it should never have been. Heimerdinger avoided the word war, but it wrote itself in the lab's temperature, in the careful way he lifted objects that wanted to be weapons. Once at dawn, a siren far away tried to rehearse panic. He tapped a copper pipe. The siren fell into tune like a student corrected mid-song and continued as a lullaby. Outside, Piltover praised order. Inside, the hairline fractures of past catastrophes mapped themselves into a star chart only machines could read. The cores hummed the way throats hum when grief finds a note. On a shelf a tiny turret shaped from tin and patience clicked in sleep like a dreaming dog. When Heimerdinger lowered his goggles, the glass showed not the room but afterimages of streets where frost had written proofs no sun could grade. Liminal witnesses. There were always onlookers, scholars pretending errands, enforcers with polite boots, Zonites in borrowed coats carrying the smell of rain from below. A child clutched a tin soldier and watched the little professor remove its heart and replace it with a slow clock that beat like mercy. An officer's pen leaked ink that crawled toward the blueprints to become signatures. A woman with a damaged prosthetic stood quietly until a turret leaned over and let her borrow its whir. When she left, it missed the weight of her hand and hummed a low note of farewell. A second audience gathered in the curved glass of the dome, arrayed in centuries dark and bright. Future pilots, ancient artificers, a queen of snow attaching a gear to a crown of antlers, a boy on a desert roof measuring wind with a paper kite. All watched the yordle who should not have been real and yet insisted upon precision. Rupture. The first rupture was an accident disguised as a decision. Heimerdinger rotated a dial past the notch that had always been the end of courage. The machine, courteous, pretended the notch had moved. The lab's dome unfolded like a stopwatch showing its bones. Outside, the sky revealed its underlying sketch, graphite lines for wind, an erased horizon, faint fingerprints of whoever had first drawn sun. Turrets pivoted toward phenomena rather than targets. Their barrels dilated into telescopes. Inside you could see rifling become spiral staircases climbed by sparks that never tired. Every lamp in Piltover brightened by a fact. People found the words they had been searching for mid-sentence and did not trust them. Bridges grew a hair longer to meet each other with a better handshake. A clock tower inhaled and coughed up a lost second from 5 winters earlier. For 1 hour the city ran on prototypes. But ruptures feed on attention. A misfit bolt rattled its opinion. The spider wrench miscounted its silk. The jar labeled abyssal frequency sighed open unasked. Across the lab, formulas rose in their chalk bodies and argued over a minus sign. Heimerdinger lifted his hand and the arguments bent around it, quiet as pets. He turned the core. Light thickened into cloth. Sparks walked rather than flew. The lab and the night negotiated, and in the pause Piltover hovered like a coin trying to decide which face to show. On the quay the tide drew a straight line and held it. In an attic 3 districts away, a broken metronome found the beat it had been owed since manufacture. His goggles darkened until they showed not the room but the plan beneath plans. His ears were metronomes. The hair on his head leaned in intervals, measuring. Beneath the table a small turret, one he had built the night the first friend died, ticked in sympathy. He spoke but not to the witnesses. He addressed the city the way one wakes a child, sternly, kindly, with a blanket at the ready. Not yet, he told it. You are not finished enough to be corrected. He turned the dial back a fraction and reality exhaled. The dome reassembled its secrecy. The sky rehung its canvas. Lamps softened into ordinary brightness. The bridges forgot the length they had just enjoyed. But forgetting does not delete the space where memory sat. In that space Heimerdinger placed the Thousandth Spark, an idea the size of a dust mote and heavy as a fallen anvil. It landed in no one's eye. It entered the world by choosing to be overlooked. He shut the jars and the tools rearranged themselves into small, humble formats. He shuffled papers that had already filed themselves. He patted the turret behind the knee until it stopped hoping for war. Then he drew a circle on the floor with chalk. The circle was not perfect. He left it that way on purpose. Perfection is a trapdoor. Imperfection is a hinge. He stepped to the center and closed his eyes. In the glass of the dome the second audience leaned forward. Outside, dawn finally remembered itself and crossed the windows with domestic light. The child with the tin soldier fell asleep standing up. The officer cleaned his pen and forgot to be suspicious. The woman with the repaired prosthetic tested her weight and did not look back. The city resumed its plan to exist. Heimerdinger opened his eyes. Proceed, he said to no one, and the word lodged in the day like a pin that keeps maps from curling. Piltover will insist he is quaint, benign, safe enough to celebrate and too odd to invite to dinner. The myth will continue to refuse their comfort. In the year when bridges lengthen before storms, in the spring when clocks cough up lost seconds, in the night when lamps seem to know a better word than light, people will feel the thousandth spark under their tongues and wonder what they meant to say. Somewhere below, the sea drums its known drum. Somewhere above, the sky smiles a smudged graphite smile. And in the lab, long after witnesses go home, a jar unlabeled by design will crack itself open. It will release the memory of a war that has not happened yet. Distant and exact, merciful and cruel, full of turrets that choose what not to shoot. Heimerdinger will listen without grief. He will set out a stool for the war to sit on and a glass of water for its throat. He will sharpen a pencil. He will not look away. The thousandth spark will stay where he set it, small as breath, waiting for the hinge to find itself again.